first of all, what made you say yes to this? I've reached out to so many people, not that many actually, but maybe at least 10, 15. I don't know if that's a lot, but and not that many were ready to talk. And I also didn't find many scientists generally talking about this in public, like just in general.
I mean, I think it's, you know, part of my role as an academic really, is we're more or less public employees, and if we have knowledge, or specialization or skills, uh, that, you know, our roles allow us to have, then we should be willing to share that with other people. And yeah, I recognize that this is a population not a lot of people know about, and very few people have actually done work with incels directly. Usually, most of the research that's been done on incels has been on their forums rather than, you know, at the more individual level. So it seems to be a very popular topic. Um, so yeah, why not?
Do you feel like in today's do you feel like today this role as a public figure is a little bit impaired, and like for like different reasons? One could be, I don't know, the topic in and of itself being a little bit politicized, and the other one being like the internet allowing for people to harass other people very easily compared to, I don't know, how old are you, may I ask?
I'm 33, so I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you
I'm
still
looking at the
remember
calendar
the
like you say.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, certainly taking this perspective isn't particularly popular. And there's been some recent articles out pushing back against, you know, I've taken what they call a mental health approach to understanding incels by focusing on, you know, difficulties that they report having. Um, and, you know, in some people's view, if I'm not calling out some of the issues with some of their forums or some of the problematic or worrisome content, then that must mean that I'm endorsing those beliefs, which is obviously not the case. I just, you know, my approach to better understanding incels and hopefully, you know, providing some foundation for society to better understand them and support them, is not going with that approach. Um, you know, I've been fortunate, that, you know, I haven't really had anyone come out and outwardly attack me, whether that's a member of the academic community or the broader public. But I recognize that, you know, it's not maybe the most popular stance, but
Hmm.
someone's got to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I know what you mean. I don't know if you've ever watched any of my content that I've done here on this channel, uh, but like most of my conversations were with people that were inside the black pill or proponents of the black pill, and one thing that I'm confronted by a lot is a big skepticism towards academia, and if you've also talked about it in your papers, and sadly enough, it seems like you understand why this skepticism seems to be somewhat justified, right? Like, not maybe in the sense that they think it is change, but at least that there is some political influence on your research that at least you can confirm, as it seems, right? Which is pretty
Yeah, I
sad.
mean, it's yeah, the difficult thing is that they've been skeptical even before there was really anything out there on
Mm-hmm.
incels. Um, when I launched my first incel study, which was back in 2018, 2019, there was no incel research out there at all. And that's kind of why I got into it, because I was hearing about them in the news, and I was looking to see, okay, well, what do we know about this group of people? And the answer really was nothing. Right? We were entirely reliant on like media depictions and stuff like that. And for obvious reasons, those aren't always the most accurate portrayal. So I started trying to recruit incels from different subreddits, and some of them were very against not only them participating, but encouraging others not to participate. Um, And I think that stems from in some of their discussions around feminism, which is obviously has its roots in academia. Um, but it was, while I understood why this population might be reluctant, it was also for me personally a little irritating because I'm going, well, because some of them had said stuff like, oh, you're just going to try to make us look bad. And I wanted to say, well, if I wanted to make you look bad, I wouldn't recruit you. I would do some analyses of your forums and talk about some of the, you know, not so great or inflammatory content on there. But I'm not doing that. I'm trying to provide more information about, uh, you know, yourselves as individuals and some of the issues and struggles that you face. So I am trying to almost humanize you more in a way. Um, and I've been open and willing to share some of the surveys, or some of them have asked, can I look through the questions first? And I said, yeah, sure, go ahead. You can see there's nothing in here where I'm trying to get, do like a gotcha moment or to paint you in any sort of negative way, because I don't think that's really going to help uh, with the situation and the positions that they find themselves in. And despite having a few papers out there that again try and provide a better view of this population, it still can be difficult sometimes to recruit for studies, which all that means is that these types of studies with incels are going to become a smaller and smaller and smaller minority of the incel research that's out there. So it's going to get drowned out unless incels are more willing to engage with us. But I understand their skepticism, so it's tough.
Do you think that, I mean, and I would say that fields like physics or like the hard sciences, let's call them maybe, are a little bit protected from political agendas, in a sense that the one that basically predicts the future the best, or the one that basically has the best theory for manipulating or predicting hard material, basically wins, and there is no way that it's really difficult to influence it with political agenda. But it seems like in the soft sciences this is way easier. um but still, I for myself have still a big trust somehow in academia. I don't know if it's just something that I've been brainwashed into thinking, or I don't know. But I somehow feel like even if there's like a few years of like, somehow everything flows back into place, because there is some strict rules of science that have to be upheld to. Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you feel protected by these rules? Do you have that as well in your day to day, where you can just rely on certain boundaries that you can have against political agenda? Can you talk a little bit about that?
So I think, yeah, you're right. In a hard science, there, and I mean this, I might be um doing a disservice to them to claim that they're very black and white, because I'm sure deep down they're actually very, very complicated. um but certainly with stuff like in the social sciences, it is more of a gray area. Predicting human behavior, for instance, is obviously going to be more complex than figuring out how much force it's going to take to move a rock up a hill, or something like that. So with that comes a little bit of flexibility. um and the different sort of epistemologies that people might take, and their way of understanding the world is going to shape that a bit more than it might um in a hard science. What I think people have to recognize is that academia, especially the social sciences, is about the exchange of ideas, and the fact that we can come at something from 2 or 3 or 10 different angles is actually really beneficial, and that's how we grow, not just as a science, but as a species, right? I approach incels from one way. Someone else does it from a maybe a slightly different way. Someone does it maybe from a very different angle. But together, that's painting a better picture of what's going on. Some of it might be more flattering than others. Some of it, sure, could be driven by personal biases, but we all kind of come into that with it. And I know the kind of work that you're kind of loosely referencing, um, but in good science, even if it is adopting a more critical lens, the researchers are supposed to come out and exactly state what biases they're bringing to the table. Me, as more of a quantitative person, that's not as expected of me, even though technically I'm bringing some to the table as well. But if we acknowledge that, and if we approach things from different angles and we throw some ideas out there, some of them might stick, some of them might not. Some of them might be a little more extreme or radical, but that's also a little bit of the role of academics in society, is to get us into different ways of thinking.
So
Sometimes that can be beneficial, sometimes that's going to help. Other times they'll just seem like a kooky academic. But it's part of their role to try to think outside the box and not just always maybe reiterate what's already out there, or solutions to problems that already exist.
I'm not sure if I got the answer that I was, or if I got the answer, because what I'm looking for is like, we okay, we have people that are highly skeptical of academia,
Yeah.
and that basically tell you you might be one of the honest ones after having worked with you in one of your studies, but the general trust against the institution of academia is basically really low. So what I would like to hear from you is basically a simple answer. If there is, if there is not, you can also tell me it's that's just how it is. If there are strict boundaries that you can put in place, hard boundaries that you are able to in order to protect yourself from any type of political influence, be it by other fields that are trying to shape your research, or be it by the people that give the money for the schools, for the universities, basically. Do
I
you
mean,
know what I mean?
I've never had any pressure to go and report something in a certain way. Um, Now, obviously, if I were to seek funding for this type of work, there might be some pots of money or some reviewers that maybe don't prioritize this, or particularly like the angle that's being approached. But I mean, that can be the same for any type of research. Um,
Except
so,
for the hard sciences, there is a monetary gain behind getting the correct result, getting the truth. So political agenda is directly in contradiction to that monetary gain if you want to obfuscate what's true, right?
well, keep
So
in mind, we don't benefit like if I got £1 million grant, I don't see a cent of that, right? So if you get a grant, that doesn't really benefit me in any. I mean, it benefits me in my career. Maybe ultimately I might get a promotion or something like that. But in the immediacy, it doesn't really impact me. And the way that grants work is that as long as you do what you say you're going to do, or something fairly close, um, you get your money. They're not concerned with the particular results you get, because they don't want to be influencing that. Now, if you go into industry, obviously that might be a little different. They might want you to find certain things, um, but I've never felt any sort of pressure um, to frame anything in a certain way, or to revise my results or anything like that. So I don't, even though this is a political and controversial topic, I haven't had any undue influences, I would say, on my ability to do my work in an objective as possible fashion.
I'm being told that I'm really, especially after my last debate, I was told many times that I'm a very pedantic person. So, just one thing that I want to get straight. I mean, I can tell you saying that you're not being pressured, and it's not that I don't believe you. I believe you. Like I don't see why in this case you should be pressured. But I'm sure there are cases where there could be. I mean, it's just one thing that comes into my mind as a possible answer to that would be that, for example, the state is looking for reducing crime, like incel violence, for example.
Yep.
So that could be a boundary. Like that could be a place where you could say, okay, if you want to achieve, if you want to know the truth, you have to let me do my job. And if you achieve a better result than somebody else who's following political agenda, for example, then you would have a boundary basically against political influence on your research. Do you know what? So in the same sense that, like, that would be. Do you know what I mean?
Not particularly. No, I don't know what you
Mm-hmm.
mean about this boundary between
Mm-hmm.
me and other people's work.
No, basically, the skepticism is that political, like, people are trying to influence academia. That academics are not seeking truth, but doing basically propaganda work to a certain extent. That's the claim, right? And what I'm asking is for you to say, yeah, I mean, we both acknowledge that there is people that would like to influence academia, right? Like there is big incentives behind influencing academic research. So we agree on that, and I think everybody agrees on that. So, but what we are trying to do now, what I'm trying to do, is basically finding out which boundaries you can have as a scientist, where you can say this is why it's not possible that they can influence my research, because if they influence my research, for example, crime rates will not go down and they will not be able to predict school shooters and stuff like that. So that would be a way how you can basically defend yourself against influence, because not seeking the truth in that case would you would directly see that result. If you are better at predicting who's gonna shoot up a school, then obviously like you have a defense against influence, right?
I mean, I suppose I've never really heard it brought up out in this way. What I mean, the suggestion you're offering there is, with the grant, they want to reduce it, let's say, incel crime. Well, they're only going to give one of us the funding, so there's not really a great opportunity for me to demonstrate that, say, my approach is better than somebody else's. In terms of
Mhm.
actually carrying out, let's say, an experiment or something like that, only one of us is going to get the funding to do it,
Sure.
and it's whoever is going to make the stronger case.
Hmm.
Um, so, I mean, what it really boils down to is, how much integrity does one have, and that is going to impact how honest um, people are willing to be in any profession. Um, do I think that some of the people who have maybe a bit more of a political agenda with this are doing it for personal gain? I don't think so. I think they genuinely believe that the way in which they were approaching this is the right way of doing it.
Hmm.
Um, which is maybe why I try to be a little bit more tolerant or understanding of that, because I think they're trying to come from a good place. Is it going to be the most effective place to come from with this particular population in these particular instances? I would say maybe not. Um, but you know, I don't know if there's any way for me to insulate myself from them or vice versa. Both of our perspectives, or all of our perspectives, are going to be out there in the world. They are out there in the world. They're all, reflected in different, uh, you know, academic pieces of work. And people are applying to grants from a variety of perspective on this topic. Um, So, I think the hope, and I think this is generally the hope with academia in general, is that it all comes out in the wash, right? we might take a few steps in the wrong direction at times, especially when exploring novel things. But you hope that in 10 years, you're in a much better place than you were. And that you've corrected any kind of routes that you may have gone down the wrong way on. So I think that's, you're ultimately playing in academia, you're playing a long-term game, right? Even if I'm right on something, I can't prove that with a single study. I need to prove that over a long period of time. Same for anybody else. And, I might make errors now and again. And, the whole field of inferential statistics, which is what I use, is all about long-term error and minimizing long-term error. So if I do this research over and over and over again, I will ultimately, hopefully, come to, some more definitive statements or findings. So I guess that's just kind of reflective of academia in general. Is we can debate our ideas, and you have to have faith that the better argument will win in the long term.